Okay, so let's dive right into what is happening in Minneapolis. We're looking at a full-blown constitutional crisis. The state of Minnesota is in a direct head-to-head standoff with the federal government, and it all escalated because of one single, really powerful threat from the president. And here it is. This message from January 15th is where things just boil over. President Trump threatened to use one of the most powerful and, frankly, rarely used laws in the United States. He's essentially suggesting he could deploy the military onto American streets. So what is he even talking about?
Well, he's talking about the Insurrection Act. And this thing, which dates all the way back to 1807, is a huge deal. It gives the president just immense power to use the military to restore order right here at home. Just to give you some perspective, it hasn't been used in over 30 years. The last time was during the 1992 Los Angeles riots.
So that's the big question, right? How did we even get here? This whole crisis didn't start with protests or some big riot. It actually all began with an investigation into financial fraud. To connect those dots, we've got to go back to the beginning.
The conflict really kicks off in December of 2025. That's when thousands of federal agents showed up in the Twin Cities for a brand new operation.
The Department of Homeland Security launched something it called Operation Metro Surge. And we're not talking about a small number of agents. Over 2,000 of them were deployed to Minnesota. Now, to put that into perspective, the state's lawsuit points out that's more federal agents than all the sworn police officers in Minneapolis and St. Paul combined. That is a massive federal footprint. And this is where you see two completely different stories taking shape. On one side, you have the federal government saying, look, this is all about public safety. We're going after violent criminals and we're investigating a big fraud case. But on the other side, Minnesota officials are saying, no way. This is political retaliation. They believe the fraud case is just a smokescreen to punish the state for its sanctuary policies. So you can imagine, with this massive federal presence, things on the ground got tense. And they got tense fast. The tactics being used just created this incredibly volatile atmosphere, basically turning city streets into confrontation zones. We're talking eyewitness accounts, videos, all documenting agents using tactics that public safety experts say are the opposite of de-escalation. You've got reports of rifles being pointed at demonstrators, chemical irritants, agents breaking car windows. They even used tear gas near a high school. The whole city just became a pressure cooker. And then that tension just erupted into violence. I mean, look at this timeline. It shows a really frightening escalation in just a matter of weeks. A shooting into a car in December, followed by the fatal shooting of Renee Good on January 7th, and then another shooting just 1 week after that.
And the death of Renee Good, a 37-year-old mother, that was the flashpoint. That one event just galvanized this wave of public anger. It unified opposition against the federal operation and sparked these citywide vigils, marches, and student walkouts that got national attention.
So the conflict then moves from the streets and into the courts. What started as this law enforcement operation with street protests, it quickly morphed into a direct constitutional showdown between a state and the federal government. On January 12th, the state of Minnesota, along with Minneapolis and St. Paul, officially sued the Trump administration. And the state's top lawyer, Keith Ellison, he did not mince words. He called the whole operation a federal invasion. And the claims in their lawsuit are pretty sweeping. Minnesota is accusing federal agents of widespread illegal behavior, saying they violated people's constitutional rights to free speech and the state's own sovereignty. They're basically arguing that these tactics are terrorizing residents, and they're asking a judge to step in and stop the entire operation immediately. But the federal government, they showed no signs of backing down at all. A spokesperson for Homeland Security just dismissed the lawsuit as baseless and said pretty bluntly that the administration is simply enforcing the law and that they have the full backing of the Constitution. In all of this high-stakes legal and political fight, it leaves Minneapolis in this really precarious standoff. There is no clear or immediate end in sight for the people who are just caught right in the middle of it. So that leaves us right here, in the middle of this incredibly tense, unresolved situation. The lawsuit is still working its way through the courts. Protests are still happening every single day. That threat from the president to send in troops, it's still just looming over the city. And Minnesota's governor is publicly pleading with the administration to, in his words, end this occupation.
Ultimately, this whole crisis in Minneapolis raises this really fundamental question about the balance of power in America. When federal and state authorities are essentially at war with each other, who is actually left to keep the peace? It's a major stress test for the rule of law, and it's left a city and a nation watching to see what happens next.